Brought to you by GTA, your island, your network.
The case dates back to 2006 when the port and YTK signed a series of 5-year leases totaling 45 years for a fisheries operation that never really got started. An ensuing dispute wound up before an arbitration panel which decided YTK's multi-million-dollar award. It was upheld by the Superior Court but appealed by the port to the Supreme Court. Attorney Kathleen Fisher represents YTK.
So I think the court had a lot of questions about really the port's argument that the lease was illegal and why the arbitrators decided that differently. And they also had some question about the damages that were awarded that both of us were answering for the court. So I think it was a court that had a lot of, interesting questions that posed challenges to both sides.
Attorney Michael Phillips is counsel for the port.
The real contest seems to be over arbitration. And the question is, well, even if they're completely wrong, and I think most people looking at it, in fairness, will concede that they were wrong. Does the Supreme Court in this case have the authority to step in and say, we're going to overturn your decision? And I think that's where a lot of the heartache is.
And then there is the overarching question of sovereign immunity and the legislature's requirement to approve any lease of more than 5 years.
The legislature has to consent when somebody sues them for land, or in this case on a contract. And the legislature has not allowed the port to lease property for any more than 5 years. And usually in government, if you don't have the authority to act, then you can't act. In this case, it's not just a lack of authority, but specific mandates from the Guam legislature that say that any leases, any conveyances of land need to go before the legislature.
Sovereign immunity is a very complicated issue, and the port did raise that. And the court raised it as a question about whether, any instrumentality of the government of Guam, is immune from this particular type of award. And there are a lot of questions that the court was asking and that I was answering and Mr. Phillips was answering about whether that's different in the context of arbitration and whether the arbitrators get to decide that first or the court gets to decide it. And that's just, that's what the court process is about, is the court ultimately will determine that.
The question of whether or not the Supreme Court can review that or should review that, as you mentioned, is key. I said it in one statement, and I think it summarizes it. They can look the other way. They have the authority to look the other way. I think the law demands that they don't.
A panel of arbitrators spent a lot of time figuring out, how to award actually the least amount that they could under the lease. And that once this is over and an amount of damages, for really the port's walking away, from its obligations is finished, then the port can move on and develop Hotel Wharf, which is a fabulous, valuable property here on Guam. I just wish Guam YTK had been able to participate in that.
The High Court has taken the matter under advisement. For Guam's News Network, I'm Nestor Lecanto.
Brought to you by GTA, your island, your network.